Hello, everyone. It's nice to have you back with the Academy this afternoon. We are so excited to have just finished a wonderful winter semester, and now here we are in the spring. And I must say, for me, it feels like spring today. It's a little warmer. Well, maybe summer up north, but not summer in Sarasota. Anyway, I'm Jana Overstreet, and I'm the Executive Director of the Lifelong Learning Academy, for those of you who are not familiar with the Academy or with myself. And I want to tell you a little bit about us and what it is we do, for those of you who also are not familiar. We are a private, not-for-profit. We are housed primarily here at the university. We rent space from them and do some collaborative programming. We also have campuses at State College of Florida in Lakewood Ranch, at Anna Maria Island at the Community Center, and we also hold services or programs at Plymouth Harbor services. I am a preacher. Westminster Tower and Shores, a University Park Country Club. So we try to get around and make it convenient for you to come to us. Most of our big lectures are held right here on the university's campus. The university's been with us as long as we have been in existence, which is we are in our 16th year. So we serve about 3,000 students a year. They take about 9,000 courses. And we do that with 2 full-time staff, 2 part-time staff, and a boatload of wonderful volunteers. And that leads me to introducing you to Bev Harms. Bev Harms has been a volunteer at the Academy for a very long time. She is a board member. She started and produces the Einstein Circle series that we offer every Wednesday afternoon. And she has been an integral part of the lecture series for the last 2 years. I have a staff member who also helps a lot with lectures, and her name is Sheila Reed, and she's not able to be here because she's over covering the office. But I do want to give her a shout out because she's done a lot of work to make all of this happen, as has Bev. So please welcome Bev Harms to the podium, who will introduce you to our speaker today. Thank you.
Thanks, Jana. This is the second in the Lifelong Learning Academy's 2015 Spring Lectures. Today we're honored to have with us retired Senior Chief Petty Officer Tom Shea, founder and CEO of Adamantine Alliance, a peak performance training program, and author of the book Unbreakable, A Navy SEAL's Way of Life. Before founding Adamantine, Tom served 23 years in a military career that took him through 3 tours of combat action. In 2009, he led a team of Navy SEALs into Afghanistan, for which he earned a Silver Star, Bronze Star with Valor, Army Commendation with Valor, and his 2nd Combat Action Medal. In 2009 through 2011, he was hand-selected to serve as officer in charge of the famed SEAL Sniper Course, a period in which he improved and transformed the sniper curriculum. In his final tour of duty, Tom served as senior advisor and senior combat developer for Naval Special Warfare Group 1, and from 2011 through 2014, served as chairman for research and development on 11 separate optics and weapons boards. But there's another story behind a story, as there so frequently is. Before he left for Afghanistan, Tom's wife, Stacy, made a request that he keep a journal of his thoughts and actions as a guide for his children, should he not return this time. It proved to be his hardest task, but the one that may have saved his life. In July 2009, as part of Operation Enduring Freedom, Tom Shea led a platoon, Navy SEAL Team 7 Bravo, in a 2-day direct action mission into northern Kandahar province. And for 2 days, hell lived in Kandahar, and SEAL Team 7 bore witness to it. It was the fight that resulted in the award of a Silver Star in recognition of leadership, courage, and dedication to duty. His wife's request resulted in the creation of an inner dialogue, a dialogue that left him with no option but to overcome fear, to survive, to fight, and to return home to her and his children. Out of that determination emerged an unbreakable spirit, and one that he believes is within all of us, only to be discovered through a personal inner dialogue that we use to see ourselves and change our lives. Tom Shea.
Thank you. Can you actually hear me? Is it reverberating in the room? Okay. Retirement is not for the weak-hearted. I retired last January in 14, and I think I'm busier now than I've ever been. I'm going to kind of slow down a little bit so that I can let you understand what I do, and then I really want to get into a question and answer session to honor the fact that you're here in an education series. Monologuing doesn't lead to education, and I don't like to do it myself, and I hate sitting in an audience where I have to just listen. So I want to do as much as I can to honor the fact that you're here. So retirement meant for me, I immediately had to go back to work. Simply because it's the gentleman here, my father Joe, if you don't know Joe Shea, he taught me series of unfortunate teaching events of fail, succeed, fail, succeed. I'd learned through Dad is just keep going. You don't have to have a solution to keep moving. And I've actually applied that rather well in 23 years of being a SEAL, is keep moving when it certainly seems you're going to die. So we retired. We moved from San Diego to Greenville and immediately had to go back to work because the retirement income is not enough to keep 3 kids and a wife alive. And so what we decided to do is we wanted to actually make these memoirs that were written emails back and forth between my wife and I into just a book that we wanted to pass on to our kids. And not innocently say that, but that was really the only intent of it. And when we produced it it was really just in the form of like a 11 by, like a regular paperback form, not even in a book. And it took me 9 months just to write that. And I'd say that, and hopefully everybody will understand it. I had failed out of West Point in English. And the act of writing for me was worse than going into combat. Because I had talked myself out of this thing called I was a writer and that I was smart. So what does a dumb guy that fails out of West Point do? No, they go into the SEAL program. So the act of writing for me was horrendous. It was the most difficult thing in the world because I talked myself out of it all the time. I would sit there and go, oh, nobody's going to read this. This is stupid. Why am I doing this? My kids don't care. All that stuff that prevents you from being really effective, I had actually done it myself. So 9 months of that frustration, we came up with just a regular, typed paper that was printed. It sat on my desk for probably 4 or 5 months. This was while I was active duty. And Stacy didn't like it sitting on the desk, so she sent it to one of our friends. And he calls on the phone. He goes, "Why don't we make a book out of it?" I'm like, "I'd love to, but does anybody know how to make a book out of this?" Nobody knows publishers, and the more people you talk to, nobody knows a publisher. Nobody knows how to do that. And I discovered as well, doing the frontal assault on a publisher, like you send it to their, "Hey, if you want to produce a book, send it to this," it just goes into the waste file. So we got denied probably 150 times. And I was about ready to quit again in my life. I'm like, well, it's not worth the time because I don't know if that's going to ever produce any results. And then somebody calls on the phone, says, "Hey, I'd like to do your book, but you have to pay me to do it because I'm an independent publisher." I'm like, okay, let's just get 5 printed out. Let's have a professional edit. And I tell you, the edit had a lot of red on the pages. So I had the current book is edited by a man named Larry Carpenter. And by the grace of God, he decided to take a risk on it. He owns a Christian publishing house. He couldn't publish it under a Christian heading because there's the F word in there. And there's killing and there's sex in it. And if you haven't read it, I'm just pre-warning you. Because I wanted the kids to know exactly, no filtration, what it was like in my life. And then I wanted to give them tasks to do so that they could, if they did these 13 things, that they would become the men and women that they could be without me being there. Long story short, we got it published by this guy. Never thought anybody'd ever read it. We launched it on Memorial Day of 2014, and it has sold 25,000 copies. Thank you. Not because it was well written. So, it was all been word of mouth. We don't have a publicity team or anything. And I say this because I want to get into what I've learned, and I had to tell this story. Because I originally thought that this was going to be a reading group, but anyway, so we sold 25,000 copies, and it's just been word of mouth. It's just been Stacy and I doing what we do, our outreach. I have done 90 keynote presentations in 18 months. I wish I would be uncomfortable speaking. It would be a lot easier not to travel. But so now that's how we sold 25,000 copies. And I'd been told by publishers and by authors that there's a sine curve involved in the production and sales of a book. You produce it, it gets sold, a lot of sales, and it dies off. So we already went through that nice bell curve. And we stopped promoting the book because we developed a business out of some of the things that I wrote about in the book. So we weren't doing anything with the book. And I got called by an agent, "Would you mind if I help you market this to a bigger publisher?" Sure. Well, I'm not doing anything with it. It's better than the actions that we're not taking. So I went to New York City. This is the first time I've told this story because it's only 3 weeks old. Went to New York City, and a bunch of publishing houses were there, a bunch of interviews, and a publisher named Little Brown, which is one of the premier publishers, he said, "I don't want to change anything." A lot of the other houses wanted to change it. I'm like, okay, so that might be a novel idea. We didn't talk about money at all. We get in the elevator, go down to the base of the big skyrise that they have in New York City, and he makes an offer within 5 minutes. And I would have closed for $5,000. And we closed for quite a bit more. Because he sees something, he has a term that he used. He said, "This is an enduring book. It's not just about you and the killing that you've done. It has influence on people's lives." was never intended to be that way. And on the reason why those two stories of fail, succeed, what I've learned is that there's always one more step. You can always do one more. And how I actually practice that is I make a living out of doing one more. It doesn't matter your background or anything, I can show you how to do one more. And right when I was transitioning out of the Navy, I'd been in so many helo crashes that I have a bunch of spinal fractures in my back and spurs. If you guys probably have these too, don't you? I don't have to describe that. So I couldn't run. I couldn't run more than 20 minutes without my legs just cramping up. I went to the doctor, and the doctor said, yes, you have spinal fractures and your running days are over. And since I had learned something earlier in my life, that don't listen to anybody because they're stupid, and don't let anybody else tell you who you are, I immediately went out that night and signed up for a 50-mile ultra marathon. And now I've done 7 of them. And I still have the stuff going on in my body. I'm just not interested in what everybody else tells me I can do. Because they also told me I couldn't write. And they also told me that a lot of things weren't going to work out. So I have a partner now, a guy named John Arnold, who was a senior executive at Ken Blanchard organization. And we teach individuals to take their lives to the next level. And we've been wildly successful doing it in a 12-month period of time, just since I've gotten out. Why did I bring that up? I'm not here to sell it. I'm here to honor the fact that there's always one more step, even in this group. Even in this group. And I know that may hit a lot of you home. So, what is actually going on in human beings, without getting into the whole thing, is what I put in the book. It's what I call an internal dialogue. It's what we actually say about ourselves that drive us. And I'm saying that you can actually learn and be taught to learn what that dialogue is, and it can get you into action in areas that you thought were impossible. We have a client that was running and got bit by a rattlesnake. She calls her 4 sons on the phone because she still had cell phone coverage and is in the verge of passing out and says goodbye to them. And when I heard her story, I call her up and I said, I would like to take you on as a client because I personally want to see what happened. She doesn't die. They sent a helo out there. She survives it. She gets half of her leg muscles cut out. 8 months later, she ran 100 kilometers. So if she can do it, she has esophageal called varices, if anybody knows what that is. The venom, not the venom, but the anti-venom rips out all the esophageal liner. And don't get bit by a snake. And she still runs. And she has 5 kids or 4 kids. But you know what happens in the middle when you're falling apart? Everything begins to fall apart. So in the middle of her falling apart physically, what usually happens to your partner is they don't want to do it anymore. So she got a divorce in the middle of all that. So her life's falling apart, and we took her on as a client because I see something in her language of never giving up that it actually inspires me. So we took her on about 7 months ago, and she's now number 5 ranked ultramarathon runner in the world. She had declared bankruptcy, and we have encouraged her to produce a business on her own that inspires her, and she coaches other runners, and she's paid off all her debt. Just because we let her talk about what's stopping her and create a new language for her. Because I can't run at the level that she runs. I can't teach her how to run, but I can teach her about this dialogue. She's created this business. You know what she tells us all the time? It's not going to work, it's not going to work, it's not going to work. We're like, hey, do it again. One more step. Call one more person. Engage this person. Don't stop. That's not all that we do, but that's something that we do. And in a matter of 8 months, she's turned her life around. That's why I do the work. And we've also grown some interesting businesses from very good to extremely good by just working with the CEO. Because I say when the CEO has it, the whole company goes like this. That's my leverage point. When a CEO actually gives a crap about people and demonstratively does that, the whole company blooms. From my background, I know that if without a good leader, the company is already going off the waterfall. So, that's my monologue. And I know that there's 1,000 questions. I know Bev had 1,000. I would rather be in a back and forth conversation with you to honor that you're actually here and that you had questions. You can try to stump me if you want. I could probably not be stumped, but go ahead. Anybody here? So I'd like to ask to be able to be available to the questions that you have. I don't play political questions. I don't want to dishonor the institution of the United States. And my opinion of somebody isn't worth anything anyway. Yes?
Tom,
All right, go ahead.
would you explain to everybody exactly, we all hear about the level of the SEALs. I think it's something none of us quite understand. You hear SEAL Team 1, SEAL Team 2. What predicates the level of SEAL you happen to be? And what are they, each of these groups?
I don't know if there's levels. So the question is, are there levels to SEALs? So there are numbered teams. The odd numbered teams are on the West Coast. That's kind of odd that I said that way. Odd number teams, 1, 3, and 5, and 7 are over in San Diego. The even number teams, 2, 4, 8, and 10, are in Virginia Beach. Team 6 is called a National Asset Team. They work directly for the President, and they're in Dam Neck, Virginia. And then there's a SEAL delivery vehicle team where they drive these mini subs around. They're also a national asset. They work for the President, and they're out of Hawaii. So there's not really levels. There's just different mission sets and who you work for. I'd like to say we're on different levels, but we're actually not. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Chief, let me first start by saying how much respect I have for the chiefs of the United States Navy.
Thank you.
They are truly the backbone of our Navy.
I agree.
The second part is in 1960, I worked aboard a mine sweep with the UDT team.
Mm-hmm.
I have as much respect or more for them than I did for the chiefs. One day I woke up and there were no more UDT teams, there were SEAL teams.
Mm-hmm.
What caused the transition? What's the fundamental difference between the philosophies of the two groups?
Yeah.
And what do SEALs do that UDT didn't do?
Yeah. Underwater Demolition Team, UDT, they had a specific mandate that they couldn't go more than 4 miles inland. So they weren't cross-trained in what happens past that barrier. And there's different stuff that happens in the water than happens on land, and you have to have those cross-trainings. So the underwater demolition teams were originally designed to be from 4 miles inland, which really is how they really operated, was from the high water line on the beach out to past the breaker. That was, in that zone is where UDT developed its livelihood, because it stemmed from the Scouts and Raiders in World War II. They had to go in early before these invasions, like in Iwo. There were people on the beach before the invasion hit that went and blew up some of the lanes so that the carriers could come in. So that's where UDT originated. They had a specific mandate, and when Kennedy came along, he designed a different funding line and a different mission set for the Navy, and what got brokered out of that was sea, air, land, SEAL, sea, air, and land, that we don't have any restrictions. They took off this inherent restriction to their training, so we'll do anything. We'll do it in the mountains. We're not restricted by just being in that surf zone, which is the worst place in the world. The water is terrible. So it just it unrestricted a Navy asset that once you unrestrict something, guess what else happens? You get a lot of money. So it's a very high-paid asset that can go anywhere in the world within 2 hours. So that's the mandate of a SEAL. There has to be a SEAL within 2 hours of anywhere in the world, among other things. And you have to be cross-trained in everything. Enough, a little bit more than to do damage. I can't say that we're masters of anything, just enough to do really good at it. I don't know if that answers it.
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, thank you for coming. I was very interested in what you started with, and you talked about, I think, 12 or 13 principles that you wanted your son to learn from the book. Could you share some of those with us?
These 13 lessons, do you know what the number 13 represents? Some people know it. It doesn't mean anything if you don't. So the number 13, by definition, means the promise of life. And I don't know how it became a bad number. That's what, in numerology, it means the promise of life. Not that I'm a studier of it. But I wanted to have something to pass on to the kids. And there are 13 things or trials that I wanted the kids to do. The first one, the third one, is probably the best one. I want you to walk for 24 hours without stopping. Because if you can do that, you've encountered the most difficult thing in life, is stop listening to this dialogue in your head telling you to stop. And you'll feel pain in your feet and your knees will hurt and you'll get sick. If you just learn to get past that at a young age, it opens up a whole other life to you. So I wanted them to encounter these really difficult things to learn to stop talking yourself out of stuff. And then the second one is encounter fear. And learn it early. Learn what fear is early. So it's really 13 trials to master this dialogue that people don't even know they have, that kills them. If you don't know you have this thing talking you out of stuff, you don't do anything. And actually, you actually believe it. I wish I could have hours to teach you that, but I don't. I wish I had a 5-minute elevator speech, and I still haven't done it after 18 months of work. So it's just a trial that if you do 13, I'll come and do number 3 with you. Because it's hard. Yes, sir.
It makes me think of a 12-step program like AA has. And I think maybe there's some similarities. Are you familiar with
I'm not
any
in AA, and I can't even talk to what they do. I just don't know. I don't know if there's similarities. I don't know. I had to have something tangible for the kids to do or for anybody to do. And I just chose the number 13.
And of course, you're getting into psychology. It's cognitive restructuring is the term they use in psychology.
Cognitive restructuring and neurolinguistics. That's for the terms that I had a psychiatrist call me and say, hey, you're teaching neurolinguistics. I'm like, that may be funny, but I failed out of school, so I ain't teaching it. Yeah, so. Well, thank you. I wish I knew what AA was. I don't.
What is the difference between SEALs and the Delta Force and the forces, the special executive forces that come from CIA and other entities?
Kind of apples and dogs. They're all not comparable. SEAL Team 6 and Delta Force, they're actually called CAG now, Combat Assault Group. They work directly for the president. They're called a national or Tier 1 asset. That's their boss. SEALs work for are the Department of Defense. We have to answer to what he wants us to do. When we're in theater, we work for that general or admiral that's in charge of those operations. SEAL Team 6, if they're in theater, they don't work for that same general that we do. So it's more of a chain of command than it is a differentiation of how great people are. We all have the same gear, we all have the same training. SEAL Team 6 and CAG train a lot more and have a lot more money. And they have a lot more of those secret things that you don't discuss. So it allows them to do higher jobs without as much risk. That's the best way to describe the difference. And they different mandates, and SEALs do a lot more. If there's a water mission, the SEAL's going to get it. If it's high value, the SEALs are normally going to get it. And CAG has its own missions that they take. They're not as the nature of the target mandated that it had to be a national asset. I don't know if you understand what I said. Any team could have done that. I could take anybody in the room here on that mission. It was a very easy mission to do. It's just the nature of it, where it was. It had to be one of those two teams because they carry a lot of other stuff and a lot of oversight. But I hope that explains that. Yeah.
Tom?
Yeah.
Tom,
Yes,
I'm sure everybody here appreciates your service. Additionally, these 13...
Thanks for paying.
I know you get paid a lot for this. These 13 disciplines that you talk about, was that part of your SEAL training, or is that your own training that you went through to achieve your SEAL training?
No, originally it was meant for the kids. As I was writing it, I was writing things just for the kids to do to develop. And going through my own experience thinking, okay, if I were to not have a dad, how would I try to want to get through life? So you got to be able to do this, and then you got to be able to do this, and then you got to be, that's kind of how I was thinking about it. And I was tying it into what I was going through on those, each chapter. Like I'd have a bad experience, and I said, for you to be able to be a great woman or a great man, you have to kind of do this first. And it ties into all my experience, but it's a linear progression of how to develop as a human being. I didn't think adults would read it, and then I went on the 24-hour challenge with a group of ranged from 68 to 12, and it was phenomenal.
How the 68-year-old do it?
They actually were better because they know how to be relentless more than the 12-year-old. So, and they're used to encountering pain. So,
how old are your children now, and are they comprehending the message you wanted to get across to them? And also, could you tell us anything about the training of a SEAL? I know a lot of it is very secretive.
no, it's not really.
No, it's not? Oh.
You could go on the internet and watch better videos than I could tell you. So her question was, what are the age of my children, and do they comprehend the training that I'm doing or the lifestyle that I...
Your message.
The message.
Of your book.
So I have a daughter that's 17 and a son that's 14, and the final son is 9, or 8, sorry. He thinks he's 9. So he's convinced me already. So Chance, the youngest one, does not comprehend it. He just kind of has lived with it. And I don't let him quit on things. And my middle boy was 3 when it was all going down. He'd survived a divorce, and he's now comprehending it. But he went through some really tough things at ages that you shouldn't go through those things, you know what I mean? But he's now grasping it. And my daughter is 5'11". She made the national lacrosse team 2 years in a row. She's a junior. and she has a 4.8 average on a 5.0 scale, and she didn't get that from me. But I don't allow them to talk themselves out of things. I don't allow them to quit on things.
I'm assuming there would be quite a fear if you let it, as you're leaving on a mission. You know, I'm sure that's true with any military.
Can I answer your other question first?
Yeah.
Okay. Otherwise, I'll forget that you asked it. So, SEAL training. SEAL training, the basic, it's called BUDS, Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL, BUDS. It lasts 6 months long. Then there's the 1 week of training in the middle of it on week 6. Sometimes it's week 5. That starts on Sunday and goes till Friday, and you get an hour and a half to 2 hours of sleep the whole time. It's to teach you one thing, and I know this because I'll tell you another story. It took me 5 times to make it through. That's sad. That's so sad. Every time I say it, I kind of cry how sad that is.
I don't know, I can't.
So I got a concussion. Then I dislocated my shoulder the second hell week. Then I got it, and I wouldn't quit, so they didn't kick me out. Then I skipped a class, let my shoulder heal, and then I got pneumonia in hell week. And then you don't recover from pneumonia as quickly as you do from a dislocated shoulder, I can tell you that. So I had pneumonia, started the next class, went to hell week, and woke up in the hospital. And they said, hey, you're not going to make it. You're one of those guys that gets injured all the time. Bye. And I was kicked out of training. I came back 9 months later and made it through. You're supposed to stay gone 2 years, and I worked for 9 months in the regular fleet military in a hospital, and I'm like, nope, this is not for me. So I just kept petitioning to go back. And I didn't make it through easily, but I made it through on my 5th try. There's only one other guy in history that took that many tries. Now they don't let people do that. So in that week of training, and I was an instructor later, or in the middle of my career. In the middle of that training, the only thing that you're teaching the kid to do is to keep his word. If your word has no relevance in the world, you're not in the right position. And so that's why SEALs end up doing things that are like most people can't imagine, is because he promised to do it. And he usually promises it without a solution. So that's how I say success is born. If you wait for a solution, you're going to wait a long, 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 long time. And you're going to talk yourself out of it by the time you get there. So, and in Hell Week, every possible bad thing in the world is going to happen to you. And the instructors are there to make sure they give you every bad possible thing that's going to happen to you. They get so cold that everybody's core temperature has to get down to 92. That's stop shivering temperature. 95 and 94 is when you're shivering. 93, 92, you don't shiver and you don't care anymore. And everybody has to experience that. And a funny story that you guys, everybody in the audience will get. Here's what happens. We put them in the water until they get so cold they want to die, and a bunch of them quit. That's a fun story, but it's not what I wanted to tell. And then you line them up for a 4-mile timed run, and you tell them this, and they can't stand up. Remember, they can't. They're so shaky they can't stand up, and they can't even button their buttons because their hands aren't working. You're going to run 4 miles in 30 minutes. If you don't, you're kicked out of training. How many people quit right there? A bunch. A bunch of people quit without even trying. So we wanted to get rid of those people by, it's not how, we're not doing anything. We're just saying, do this. And a bunch of people quit. I saw people do that 4 mile faster than they did when they were fresh. Because something inside of them starts clicking. So half the class passes at 4 miles. Those people that pass, we let them go to a fire and get warm. The failures, we put them back in the water. And then we said, okay, you get one more try. Then some of them quit. The people that step on that line and try it on the brink of failure, you'll never make them quit again the rest of their life. All the SEALs that you hear about on TV, those are the ones that failed and had to do it a second time. The rest of Hell Week is to get rid of the winners. Because they've never had to face failure again. And to these guys, you don't have to pay attention to them. They're never going to quit again. It's a weird phenomenon, and it's crazy. And I don't encourage doing that right now, though. So, what was the third question that you had?
You're leaving on a mission, and family, and anticipation, and fear, and will you be home, and what are you encountering while you're there, and all of the unknown that seems to go with that.
There's people that spend their lifetime studying that. Fear doesn't exist, and you've heard that 1,000 times. It doesn't exist anywhere other than your head. It doesn't. So, our training is so much harder than combat. Combat is welcome. Because they never let you win in training. If you're doing really good in training, they'll mock kill somebody so you have to drag them around. If you're doing so good, they'll kill the leader to see if everybody else can take over. Until it's one-on-one dragging people, and you just push everything to the brink. That's in training. So you never get comfortable. So going out on a combat mission, you're like, oh, I mean, we can win this one? So it's a mentality shift other than encountering that you're going to die. I actually had to take off my ring and put it on my desk, my combat desk in my room, so I couldn't think about my family in combat. I just don't let myself think about it. So I can't say that I was never afraid. I was scared, but I was never afraid that I was going to die, because I'd already died so many times in training. I'm like, whatever. So that's how it occurred to me. Some people that don't go through this experience have never experienced this thought called fear and death, and they lock up. But I've never seen a SEAL do that. Let's get in the back. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You've actually partly answered this question, but you got an 18-year-old kid now who's been wanting to be, has dreamed about being a SEAL since he was 5 years old, never changed his mind, graduates from high school now, and he wants to pursue his career as a SEAL. Mm-hmm. What's the first thing he has to do and steps that he has to go through? And roughly, I'm sure from what you said, there's a variation from one person to another, but what can they realistically look at if they have a relatively successful educational training before they become a bona fide, legitimate SEAL?
To get into training? To pass the test to get in? Is that what you're asking?
No, what I was looking for the time constraint from the day they start until they potentially have completed their training and are ready to be a bona fide SEAL.
Okay. What's the time from signing up for the Navy until the time that they pin a trident on? Is that the best way to? Okay. So there's a gold thing that looks like an eagle that's called the SEAL trident. It's an eagle carrying a Poseidon's trident with a pistol in one hand and the trident in another, and an anchor in there somewhere. And it's the only, the SEALs are the only enlisted force that are allowed to wear gold, because gold is an officer color. I don't know why I said that, but I don't know why I said that, but so you sign up for boot camp. SEALs is the only program that's special operations that you can specifically sign up to go to. You can't sign up for Green Beret on the first day before you go through boot camp in the Army. You have to wait till you're at a certain age level and experience level to go from the Army to Green Beret. So you sign up for boot camp, then you go up to Great Lakes. So boot camp is about 2 months, 2 to 3 months. And then you go up to Great Lakes, and you're in a holding pattern at Great Lakes in a pre-SEAL program that could be 2 months long to 6 months long, waiting for a class number to open up in San Diego. They only take 150 to 200 people per class, And if there's a lot of pool of people wanting to go to the SEAL program that have already qualified, they have to wait till there's an availability in Coronado. And that could be, that's why I can't give you a perfect linear thing. So usually don't get your Trident until 1.5 years to 2 years after you came into the Navy, because it's so long. Once you check into training Coronado, if it works out perfectly, it's 12 months. And how many things work out perfectly? They don't. I mean, you could come in right before Christmas, then add 2 weeks to it. And then all those vacations, and then you get injured or something happens, and very few people make it the first time. We started out with 111 and graduated 11. And that was 23 years ago. And it hasn't changed a bit. They just ramp up the number of people that they put into it, and they end up the same ratio of how many instructors are there. That's the ratio of students that make it through. It's a weird phenomenon. It's the only program where it has to be intimate and intense. If you cannot do that program by yourself, and if the instructors don't pay attention to you, you will quit. And usually the attention is, I'm going to kill you if you don't do this. And that level of attention is what dummies like me needed to get moving. Not that I'm done, but so it takes 1.5 to 2 years to make it through. Yes, ma'am. Do we have another? Sorry, we'll come back.
Tom, thanks for your service.
Thank you.
If one of your boys wanted to join the SEALs, would you encourage it?
I would try to talk him out of it, because if you can talk somebody out of that, they're not going to make it through. I have probably 15 kids a week try to contact me and ask me what it takes. And I spent a lot of time early on after I retired trying to help people make it through, or to get ready. It was a relative waste of time for me. Not that my time was valuable, it's they were not committed. I had guys show up without even having an idea what the test was like. Nothing I can do. You have to do certain things. You have to, if you can't do 100 push-ups and 100 sit-ups in 2 minutes, both of those separate. 2 minutes of sit-ups, you got to do 100. If you can't, don't even show up. Because the competition to get into BUD/S training is, you got to break out high. If you don't break out high, you're not going to be selected. So the average number of 2 minutes of push-ups is 100 of all the students that show up. 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups. You have to do at least 20 pull-ups to be in that group. And then there's a run and a swim. And the run, it's about equivalent of, I think you got to run, gosh, I can't remember what it is. I just can't remember what it is. Sorry. I think you got to run 3 miles in less than 20 minutes, which is scooting. And you're doing all that all at the same time. Push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, run, swim. And you're tired by the time you get in the water. It was exhausting. And if you can't pass the test, nobody can even, no use even mentoring somebody on how not to quit, because they can't get in. It was frustrating for me. I don't know why I told you that story, but I really would love to people to do it. I just know the attrition rate is what it is. And the biggest studs that show up never make it through. Never. Because you take everything away from them and they're not used to it. We always called them bottom feeders. The ones that you could give them a can of Copenhagen and they could survive a week. That's the guy that we want. And that's hitting now, isn't it? Okay. And it's not genetic. It's not tough guys. It's not a background-driven thing. There's kids from rich families. There's kids from abused families. There's kids that were drug addicts when they came in. no walk of life. They try to make it, the attrition rate's so high that all these study groups come in and try to figure it out. It all boils down to the guy not quitting. And I don't know if that's genetic. So I learned from that is what's going on with human beings is they have this dialogue that some people master and some people don't. The ones that quit have actually mastered it and listened to it and took action in the form of quitting. The ones that just say, you know what, I'm going to keep going in this direction. That's what I learned in combat, is you can be outnumbered 65 to 12, and if your dialogue is that you're dead, you're dead. And if your dialogue is, well, I have 3 magazines and I have 20 rounds in each magazine, I have 60, who else wants the other 5? And that is how you drive action. Or you can talk yourself into everything. It's a little more complex than that, but that's what I learned in SEAL training, is you can dialogue anything into existence. I think we were up here, sorry. Yes, ma'am.
I noticed that in your book you talked about, you gave those 13 tasks, but then you also had one for your daughter as well, being a Spartan wife.
Mm-hmm.
And as per like the Q course opening up to women, not the SEALs, but for Army, it looks like that's the next front. So we're going to have women who have to do these things as well. And I wondered if you had any bead on their unique challenges, whether you think it's a good idea that they be special operatives, things like that.
Easy question to answer. Can women do it? Yes. I was on an adventure racing team where the woman was stronger than I was. So it's not the fact that they can't. It's the fact that a lot of factors. I'm going to be brutal on them for a second. You have 2 seconds to change out. You don't have a separate place to go potty and shower. Is our society ready for that? Don't know if we're ready for that. I know 1,500 other SEALs that they fight for their women. So we have to have some shift there. The other big thing is there's no need or requirement to open it up. We're overmanned. What would be the reason to expand in that? Have I been in combat with women? Yes. We had a combat camera woman that refused to pick up a gun. She picked up the gun very quickly because we were getting overrun. I said, well, you could die or you could shoot. Well, I was here to take pictures. Those pictures aren't doing anything for us right now. So.
And you have the helo pilot that you mentioned as well.
Yeah.
Female helo pilot. It's not. So I guess
to me, it's not a capability thing. It's a question of why.
I guess it was a social question, since it is happening up in the Army. I'm in the program here for psychology, and I'm doing a thesis now on how to bring people back mentally, because I do believe it's a mental thing with PTSD as well.
I agree 100%.
So my question is more, since it is happening, what do you foresee? With the Q course it is.
So they tried through Rangers, and it didn't work. They tried in Ranger school, and it didn't work. I don't have the data on it. I just know that it was not effective for some reason. Just so you know, since you're going to, I'd rather talk to you offline about this. Not because I don't want to talk about it in a group, because that's a big, long discussion. What was I going to say?
Say it later?
I'll say it later. Yeah. No, I'd like to talk to you about that.
Appreciate that.
No, no. I think we have another one.
Yeah, Tom, you probably don't remember me, but I worked with your dad.
I'm sorry.
And he mentored me too, so I first met you when you were in high school, and I remember your dad talking about you going to West Point. And now he's going to be a SEAL, and I won't tell you the number of names he called you.
Yeah. I could tell you.
But I don't have a question for you. I just wanted to let you know that I agree. your dad's special.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
This is more in the nature of comment. Jason Garrett, the coach of the Dallas Cowboys, took his Dallas Cowboys to Coronado in the summer of 2013.
Okay.
And just to see what it was like not to give up.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's been the biggest problems, at least that he felt this was the problem with the Dallas Cowboys. And one of the exercises was working with these artificial logs that 3 or 4...
Telephone poles.
Telephone poles.
Yeah.
And all of the exercises were done with the arms fully extended, regardless of what it was. And he asked the instructor, when they'd finished, he said, how do you, these guys are all great, how do you decide who to keep?
Mm-hmm.
And he just looked at him and said, the guys whose arms are straight.
The guys decide themselves.
Yeah.
You know how you decide yourself? You put your arms down.
Yeah.
You talk yourself out of everything. I totally agree with you. The one thing that people aren't seeing is that people never master not quitting. I watch my daughter play lacrosse. They get down 10 points. So they don't play as hard. You have 10 minutes left. Oh, you're never going to get back because you give up. Pro athletes are the same. Like we have a pro golfer that's one of our clients. And what happens is all this other stuff that's going on in their life starts detracting on their golf game. Not Tiger Woods, but like Tiger Woods. So they stop focusing. So in this moment, you can always focus if you just pay attention to what's going on here. And that's not giving up. Just don't give up on what's going on right here, right now. And you can always do this. You can always take one more step. And people don't understand that. They talk themselves out of everything. But to actually do it when you're outnumbered and outgunned and tired, then not to quit is a little different. We took over, so I got the Silver Star. It was not an award. You give it to somebody, you can't try to get the thing. So we flew into northern or central Afghanistan up in the mountains. We knew what we were getting into. We'd watched this target area for a long time. We knew there were Chechens there. We knew they had guns. We knew they were doing military training. We flew in 4 miles from the target. On insert, we were getting rocketed. There's a reason to give up right there, because the helos just left us. We're all by ourselves. Our guys had learned not to give up. We didn't even shoot back. They can't see us. So we just walked out of that initial contact without anybody dying or anybody panicking, because we still got stuff to do. However, between 4 miles and the target, that was a long time. So we fought our way to the target, ended up killing 37 Taliban on their way to the target. If combat is like everything slows down, and 4 hours is actually 10 years. That's how it occurs. It's like forever. And everything literally slows down. It doesn't go faster. So we hit the target, and I realized I had made a mistake in my target analysis. We thought we were going to be in these buildings. There's a cliff right there where somebody could be on the cliff and throw grenades into the buildings that we were going to maintain. And I'm like, oh boy, it's going to be a long day. So we had to keep clearing out into this valley. So we cleared out some more buildings. Now we're about 400 to 500 yards away from these mountaintops. And we're spread too thin now because we had to have some people up on the mountains overlooking us and some people down the valley. Then throughout the day, we killed another 20 Taliban. What do you usually do when you have won? Celebrate. We had 2 hours before we were going to get extracted. We let our guard down. And what usually happens? It hit the fan. It hit the fan royally. I was laying with my back against the wall looking up at a hilltop that was 630 yards away. and I saw what looked like red bees flying. I'm like, oh no. I just remember, I laid down, and they hit right at the corner of the wall and the floor right where I was seated. And these tracer rounds hitting everywhere. And 6 rockets came into our compound, and guys were jumping into windows. I jump into a window. A rocket follows me into the room and blows me to the back of the room. Is there a reason to quit? This seems like there's a reason to quit. So I was laying on the ground, and what do you usually say to yourself when everything falls apart? Older people know this. What do you usually say when it ain't going to ever work out ever again? I'm dead. I said to myself, I'm dead. What did my body tell me to do? Or what did my body do as a response? 0. It wouldn't do anything because I've asked it to do something, and it's going, okay, you want me to do that? I'll give you death. And I couldn't get my arms to react. I just remember looking up going, I'm dead. And I hear all the fighting going on outside. And I don't know how long that period of time went, and then I remember Stacy saying to me, don't fear dying, it makes you weak. Fight your way back to us. I sat up. I literally sat up. I'm like, well, I'm going to fight now. The only thing that shifted there was my dialogue. That's the only thing that shifted. The world didn't shift. It didn't get less dangerous. So I started fighting. I went up next to the window that I got blown through, and one round hits right next to my eye. I'm like, ooh. So I held up a piece of something in the room to see if I could determine where he was shooting from, and he hit right in the middle of this piece of paper. And I'm like, The only thing that this window can see is that hilltop, and it's 635 yards away. It's a sniper. And I started playing a game with myself called, well, hey, there's a sniper. Well, I'm better than he is. And I helped train Chris and all these other snipers that you hear about. And I ended up taking over sniper school. And I said, well, I'm a better sniper than he is. That's the only dialogue that shifted. So I went to the back of the room, put a blanket over me. I'd learned how to hide in shadows. And I crawl up into the shadows that were inside the room because I knew he could see in there into that, through that opening. And I got to that last little inch or two where I couldn't see him. I'm looking at the hilltop. I'm like, I had the next 2 inches of the rest of my life. I remember thinking this. He's got to be in the next 2 inches. So I took all the slack out of the trigger, moved, saw his head, squeezed the trigger, and I'm under the blanket, remember. And something hits the top of my blanket, so a bullet goes right by my eyeball, misses my chest, and lodges in the ground. So what did I didn't die. I rolled out of the way going, oh my gosh, it hit my head. I'm going to, okay, nothing. I didn't know if I got him. I had to do it again. So how many people take that next step? Like, well, I'm just going to do it again. Do it again. I can't do anything else. I'm just going to play it again like it never happened. So I go out there and, okay, I see him. And I shot him through the head, and there was blood all over the rocks behind him. And then I started shaking. Oh, okay. And that's how I learned to use dialogue to produce action when it doesn't seem like it's ever going to happen. Then we fought and fought and fought and fought. The whole fight lasted 45 minutes. We're out of food, water, and ammo in 45 minutes. We shot 65 mortar rounds, threw all our grenades over the wall. Their grenades came back. We threw them back over because they were right on the other side of the compound. And there was a B-1 bomber that came on, and we had him drop bombs right on us, and we survived it. And that whole compound got sheared down by the bombs, and we were inside it. It was crazy. And we just never gave up. But there was no way that I was going to get caught prisoner. I said, well, drop him. I'm not going to go. I'm not going to be a lone survivor. So fear of death, there's no way I was going to be I'd rather die than be held captive by those creatures. So that was my anger thing for the day. Thank you. So. And we were so successful in that day, we were supposed to leave. They said, hey, why don't you stay another day? So it was brutal. So we stayed another day. Firefight all day long the next day. In an inferior position because everything had been dilapidated. And we just kept fighting. And we came back and took a week off, and then went back into it. And that period lasted 6 months. If you have to live each day as if it's the only day you have. Well, what would be available to people if they live that at any age? That's what I'm interested in. Because if I can do that in my background, and I know that it's effective, anybody can do it. And it's actually, you can learn it, which is another great thing. You actually learn what my partner and I are teaching. So, I don't know if that answers your question or not. So it happens when you're a professional speaker, you can't stop.
Thousands of American combat veterans come back to the States every day and are unable to make a transition to normal life for a wide variety of reasons, a lot of which are psychological. Have you thought about trying to apply your technique in some way to help these veterans who otherwise are not faring too well, and often it's because of their own inability to go on?
From the business side, let me talk about that. I don't want to be cold about it. I don't have PTSD. I've been in 2,700 hours of active combat. I look at that number and go, huh? How many years is that? If you were to line it up left to right, 2,700 hours of people shooting at me. And I don't have PTSD. Because of him, he was worse than the enemy. So that's not true. There is no ask. Nobody's asked me to do that. Do I think it can be life-altering? I've seen it. I gave a 3-hour presentation to a group, and the woman contacted me after. She says, I lost my daughter at 4 years old. She was trichrome and deformed, and I talked myself out of being a mom. And for 5 years we've struggled. I've had 6 miscarriages. We're about ready to get divorced. And something that you said of just get back involved in it and stop talking yourself out of it. I'm like, yeah, just get back involved in it. She said, well, God had told me not to be a mom. I'm like, well, I've met God and the devil. I don't think that's what he said. And so a year later, she sends me a picture of her child. So yes, PTSD can be ruled. You have to let go. I've done more killing than people with PTSD. Do I remember it? If I can remember it, I might as well remember it the way that I want to remember it. Instead of, oh my gosh, that was terrible. I've seen guys get their legs blown off. Terrible. Or an opportunity. One of the guys, SEALs that I know that came in to relieve us, got his legs blown off. 3 days in theater. We're at month 5.5, and he's been there 3 days. We're so mature, we shouldn't even have taken him out with us because they just couldn't teach him everything that we didn't know, that we knew. And he did something that he wasn't supposed to do and got his legs blown off. He's now on the U.S. Paralympic team because he refuses to have that mean anything to him. And he just said, thank God I'd get my junk blown off. I have that. Above his knees, he's got nothing. And he runs and he skis and he does everything and he swims. He doesn't have PTSD. I can still hear him screaming. Is that PTSD? I don't know. I just think it's a movie in my head. It doesn't stop me from doing anything. And I can talk about it. Does my heart palpitate when I do that? Not that one. The Silver Star one I can get pretty emotional about. But yeah, are you asking? If you know anybody I'd love to do that.
Well, there's certainly a need.
There's a massive need. I was a part of a push to get iPods to wounded warriors. We raised like $75,000 for them. And just to give them iPods so they could have some kind of connection, because everybody abandons them. Well, if everybody abandoned me, I'd give up too. So, but it's such a nebulous world. Unless somebody comes and asks for help, you can never give help. Otherwise, mind my language, it's called pissing up a rope. If you do something that nobody asked for, it just comes right back down on top of you. And that's not the way I want to live my life. So.
Yes, simple question. Do you miss it at all?
I'm busier now. I don't miss getting shot at. I miss the extreme level of professionalism of being around a group of people that come to work and sharpen their knives every single day. And they don't tolerate you not sharpen your knife. That is hard to replace. Where everybody there, it's not that it's competitive, but if you don't bring your A game every single day, those tigers will eat you up. So you just learn to, every time I go to work, I bring my A game. If you have to, because everything is to the limit, everything. You push everything until it breaks, everything until it breaks. Because you only learn from failure, you never learn from success. It's the only organization I know that does that. We don't want you to succeed, we want you to fail. What worked, what didn't work, make it better. So you're always working on the things that don't work. If you're good at shooting, stop doing that. Do the things that you're not good at. And teaching people to do phenomenal things, like when I was in charge of sniper school, I'm going to teach you to shoot something you can't see. Huh? That's what we're going to do. You're not going to be able to see the target, and you're going to shoot it right where you want it to go, at 1,500 yards. And they can't fathom it. And seeing them grow through that experience was, to me, exciting. So I'm taking that level of excitement into the work that I do with clients. So the only thing I'm missing is getting shot at. And I could go up to Detroit and or go to Miami and probably get shot at. So. Anybody else? Are we over on time or anything? I'm not tracking on it. Okay. Does anybody have the mic? Okay.
I don't even need the mic.
That's
I
fine.
was just going to ask you, how does somebody that comes in there who is kind of fanatically religious, how does, I should say, does being a Navy SEAL and religion conflict? I mean, you know, if somebody's being shot at, they haven't got time to turn around and pray. I was curious to know whether
that question gets asked every single time.
The reason I ask you that question is I'm a retired physician, and when I was on a panel where we were discussing certain things with a bunch of pastors in the Pastoral Association, I was asked the question, when does religion and medicine mix? So I'm going to ask you, when does religion and SEAL, I don't know what to call it here, standards or what, do they mix?
When does killing and religion mix? Just say it what it is. Yeah. My answer that's funny is I worked for the Archangel Michael for 23 years. And if you're a study of religion, you kind of know what that was. To me, religion is an inappropriate term. By definition, it means to relate backward. The word religos means to relate backward. So it's not necessarily religion, it's spirituality. Spirituality means, by definition, things are connected through time, space, and distance all the time. Throughout time, everything is connected. That's what spirituality is for me. So where does God come into play? It's that everybody's connected. And your impact is a wave across time. That may not answer your question. When you lose connection with people, that's what the devil is to me. When you lose that you are an impact on somebody, it's my rendition of the devil. I've not met him. I was in the place where he was supposed to be. Those people that are our enemy, they lose connection. They're willing to kill themselves for some crazy hoo-ha. That to me is the devil. You're that silly, I'll shoot you, because I'm not going to die. So, anger is loss of connection. I can't say I was ever angry in combat.
Good answer.
So, I can be angry though, so when I lose connection. Ask my daughter, she'll tell you. Yeah. Her.
How many SEALs are there?
Around 1,800 active duty. There's 22,000 Green Beret. Our training is so hard. It's so hard to train somebody to become a SEAL that if you had a business called SEAL training, you'd be out of business. Because attrition-based work, it's just no way to, produce a lot of volume of results. But right now, there's 1,800, maybe 1,900 active duty SEALs. Obviously, people that have gone through the program. The whole numbers of living people that have gone through the SEAL, I don't know. I don't know what that number is. Yeah, very small number. But it's beyond force multiplication.
Are they being used a lot, or do we just...
What time is it? Constant. You don't hear about everything.
We just hear about things.
Yeah, constant. They're being used right now. Not all of them, but there's a rotation. You can't stay in combat your whole life, so you rotate with other teams that come in and relieve you from that burden. We can only do it for 6 months. The Green Beret do it for 12 months. I'm like, I can't keep my attention going. We just know that we can't last in the attention span of combat more than 6 months, because it's exponential downhill. You stop paying. At the end, when we were in Afghanistan, I stopped ducking. The round cracked over my head. He missed. Keep going. So we became jaded at the 6-month mark. Then they're like, we're pulling you out. You just stop. You stop paying attention. You stop caring because it's just too much for the human experience to have. You can survive a long time, but you're not effective anymore at the 6-month mark, because our combat tempo is not do something, take 4 weeks off. It's do something, plan for the next mission. Whenever it comes up, it could be 48 hours later. You've got to be back up and running again. And it's a hard tempo in theater. So, I don't know if that answers your question. Yes, ma'am.
How many men were on the mission where you were pinned down and you had those thoughts? How many were actually on that mission, and how many of you made it out?
We inserted with 68 and came out with 68. I never lost another SEAL that was under my command. Not even an injury. The closest one was I was laying next to one of my other snipers up in Kandahar in a place called Marja, which is the capital of Helmand. It's in the book if you hadn't read it. But what really happened. So this is a 5-day mission. SEALs don't do defensive missions, but we took over the capital of Helmand, the biggest drug bust in U.S. history, like $3 billion of black tar opium. And so we stayed there, and that was their budget. That was the Taliban budget. And they threw everybody at us. We killed 200 Taliban in 5 days. That's just a metric. Don't be all disturbed by it. When you're in a business, you measure something. So that was our measurement for success. So this is on day 3. They would fight us 4 times a day. It was nice. You knew that they weren't going to fight in the middle. 7:30, 9:30, they take a siesta because it's 120 degrees. Then they come back at 2:30 or so, and then half an hour before dark. Okay, we can sleep the rest of the time. Because we were doing it so many times throughout that, they wouldn't fight unless it was during certain times. Because you'd kill everybody, and then they'd have to go figure out what to do and come back. That's the God's honest truth. So I'm laying next to my buddy, and we're shooting, and we're getting shot at. And I happen to be over at a different angle, and I shoot at somebody. killed somebody. And he's like, oh, Chief. And I look over at him and he spits a bullet out of his mouth. And it slowed down enough just to break his two front teeth. I'm like, that was close. Woo. That was the closest we were.
What was his reaction and yours?
He spit it out.
He kept on going?
Yeah.
Oh my, you guys are different.
You do it every day for 20 years.
But you are different. You react differently than most people, I think.
It's probably because you just stopped giving up. You stopped talking yourself out of all kinds of things.
Go there and watch him and spit out a bullet?
If you'd done it 100 times before then, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. There's so many other bad things that happen in training where you're just, yeah. Training is harder than combat. And I don't say that tongue in cheek. It's so hard that by the time you do something that, oh my gosh, I could die, you're like, that's not as bad as that other thing we just did.
How come you don't kill the sergeants?
Huh?
How come you don't kill the sergeants if they're that bad? I mean,
No,
stay alive.
because you can't. You can't.
Well, what is your reaction?
They will.
when
They're too
make
intimidating.
demands? Do you get angry at them, or do you just want
No,
to?
you just don't listen to them anymore. The reason how you become successful as a student is you stop listening to them talking you out of it as well, because they try to tell you not how they try to talk you out of it.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, you're never going to make it.
You're going to show them.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And you stop listening to all the. I don't remember what my instructor said, because I stopped paying attention to them.
So that's how. How
Yeah.
come you didn't kill them? Because stop listening.
Well, they're too
to them.
intimidating. They're so. If you've ever been intimidated, times 5, because they can do everything 10 times better than you. And you're like, oh. And if you do it, one guy tried to fight an instructor,
And what happened?
and it was scary.
What happened?
One guy, when in the pool, puked in the pool because he was drowning. So, 200-pound guy in the pool. An instructor on the side reaches down and puts his fingers on the sides of the guy's nose and lifts him up out of the water by his nose. I'm like, I ain't playing that game. He's stronger than me. I'm not going to play that game. No, they're really, to be an instructor, you have to be at the top of your game. And they're too intimidating. I never thought about it. I thought it was an honor that they were teaching us. So it's an us against them thing. Yes, sir.
My question is, do your officers go through the same training
Yeah, same.
you do?
Everything.
Do they go on missions with you?
Yeah, everything. There's no differentiation. You can't be an officer in the SEAL community unless you do everything with the men.
And they go with the teams?
Yep.
Out in the field?
The top guys don't. So the last time you're a field operative is a lieutenant or an 03. Army, it would be a captain. That's really the last time you're going to go on missions. If you go to Team 6, they allow you to extend that another 4 years so you can be a lieutenant commander and go out on missions. But by the time you're a senior officer, you're not touching a gun anymore. So, yeah.
And why is that?
I don't know. It's because all the junior guys are better than the 45-year-old guy that's been sitting behind a desk. So, yes, ma'am.
When you stopped participating in combat, what was the decisive? When the last time you participated in combat, what precipitated you stopping?
You go through natural cycles. So you can only be at a team up to 5 years, and then you have to rotate to training. So I had gone from SEAL training as a student to SEAL Team 2. Then I went to instructor duty at SEAL training as an instructor. Then I went to SEAL Team 7. And then I naturally progressed back to training, and I took over sniper school. And then my wife and I decided that we didn't want to pick up rank because we'd already done all the things that we set out to do. So we then started transitioning out 2 years before retirement, and I took the job of research and development, which is a phenomenal job. So there's natural progressions to it. When I got in, we were undermanned, and you could stay an operator as long as you didn't die, but there was no combat going on. You could stay on deployment for up to 2 years because everybody was understaffed, so you could stay on deployment. You could just rotate to another team and be an augment for them.
We have one more question, and then we'll wrap up.
One more question.
Hello. In the movie American Sniper, Chris Kyle is depicted as calling his wife while he was in combat situations. It's not realistic.
I think they probably tried to tell a story there. It can't happen.
Yeah. We didn't think it was realistic.
I think they were trying to tell a story there. I haven't seen the movie. I don't know why I haven't. It's just I haven't. I know Chris rather well. An hour after he was shot, I was driving from North Carolina to South Carolina, and the cop on site called me. So, I don't know why I said that, but they're trying to tell a story that Clint Eastwood wanted to tell with Taya's guidance and all the actors' guidance, and it's a story. Movies aren't true, so you don't call your wife from combat. No. You call her after maybe, but yeah. But he was a dyed-in-the-wool killer. He loved it. His wife didn't love it. He loved it so much that he gave it up to be with her, and she still didn't like all that stuff. He would have stayed doing it forever. The conflict in their marriage was that he loved it and she didn't. She wasn't like Stacy. Stacy loved that I was doing it. It made it a lot easier to do it. No conflict at all. She's how many today? Oh, okay, you want to talk about it? Yeah, I want to hear the whole thing. I didn't know she cried every time after we talked because she was kind of that stoic, but she knew she had to embrace it, otherwise it would cause problems. And that's why I call her Spartan wife. It felt to me she kept going like this, and I didn't want to do it anymore. She'd go. Like, oh. So I think that was it.
I think that's about it. Wraps it up.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you. Thank you.